of you, the audience. We're interested in knowing and hearing and sharing your reflections on what you've just seen. And of course, if you've got questions from Laura, for Laura or Dr. Andrusiak, we'd love to see them. Now, if I've got it right, the way you respond is to click on the Q&A option to put in your thoughts or questions, or in the chat. Our technical operator, Alta Doyle, will keep track of the order of responses. And now my question to you. Which scene or scenes most resonated for you and why? Alta, do you see something coming up there?
Not as the moment. No questions yet.
I know that it's always the first person who's the brave one. And then it seems that everybody flows in with their thoughts. Is there something that happened with a member of your family that you are reminded about here? Maybe at work, maybe in the home. And what is it that you feel that you might have learned? And I see Dr. Andrusiak up there. Doctor, did you have a thought on this?
I liked the presentation a lot as well. I liked how especially they gave examples where over time the family members were able to realize that it's a matter of being present, as they said, not to run away, and to also like the discussion with Maggie, where her sister allowed Maggie to lead the topics and not necessarily contradict her and tell her, look, that's not the way it is. That's not your underwear size. That's an excellent example of what works best. Nothing works perfectly, of course, because it's a disease, so things aren't going well. But yeah, there are approaches that are, you know, best reflective of the love we naturally have for our family members.
And Laura, I hope you will let me know. I can't see who's making their comments, so please be sure to let us know. And I see Raya coming up there.
We have a comment from Renata. I'm so sad. I'm so sad to leave my grandmother when I go home. Not sure what to tell her.
Right. Laura and Dr. Andrusiak, you have experience with that.
One of the things that we say at the Alzheimer's Society, and I think the doctor just alluded to it, is connect, don't correct. And so you want to make a good connection with the person and not correct them or argue with them, which is basically exactly what he was saying. And so when you're leaving her, you know you're going to see her again, and just say, I'll see you again, and we'll be together again soon. And if there's some sort of argument, don't argue with her, just sort of go along with her on her journey wherever she's at.
Lovely.
Okay. We have, oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Alton.
We have one from an anonymous attendee. When a loved one asks for a material item that they cannot have for safety reasons, my aunt keeps asking for some black thread and a needle. How can I respond?
Who wants to take that one on? Laura?
I would love to take that one on. What we try to do is look for the emotion behind what they're saying, rather than what they're actually saying. So if she's asking for a needle and a thread, to me, it sounds like she wants to do something productive and she wants to be involved in daily life. And so I would look more to the emotion, perhaps expressing, it sounds like you're missing sewing, and then begin to talk about some of her life experiences and reminisce. That's the way that we usually approach those types of issues with regards to safety. You don't want to state to her, you can't have that because it's not safe, because in her reality and on her journey, she doesn't understand that. So try to deflect and talk to the emotion behind what she's saying.
Lovely, thank you, Laura.
Luba doesn't have a question, but she wants to say thank you to those vignettes and the whole session. It's been incredibly helpful.
Дякую, Люба. Next, Alta.
There's nothing coming up. People are being shy, I think.
Laura,
Hi.
what, in your experience, and you've had a lot, and you, doctor as well, perhaps you can tell me, what are some of the trickiest questions that come to you? And also, perhaps the ones that make you feel you're doing your job? Or
Well,
to
I
help you
can,
do your job.
I'll cut in. I'll let Laura speak after. I think the trickiest ones are also the same ones where you do your job. I think for me, at the stage where I see people when they're in a residence, you know, what they call an institution, the stage of the disease is more advanced, and so the toughest questions are really when the family asks what comes next. You know, is this going to get better? Those are tough because, you know, as a doctor, you're supposed to make people better, and just as a human being, you don't want to say, look, at things are just going to keep getting worse. But at the same time, you know, it's that's our job, is to prepare the family so that they can better have the tools to provide the love and care that the suffering person needs, right? So that's, we end up having to describe, you know, this is the process they're on, and they might have small bounce backs at times, but overall it tends to, you know, be a loss of function, and we just have to adapt our ways to look after them based on what they're able to interact with. It's a tough one, but that's our job.
Yes. And I know
I-
over.
I'm so
how many
excited to
people
add
we-
on that.
Yeah, go for it, Laura.
So one of my favorite words, doctor, is anosognosia. And that's when the person who's living with dementia doesn't recognize that they have dementia. And so they feel that they're able to do things on their own. So one of the trickiest messages that we need to impart to family as well as staff is that we need to let them be able to do as much as they're capable of doing, and also to look at their strengths, the remaining strengths. We know that some of the things that remain are the ability to have joy and feel emotions and enjoy music. So if we can tap into their strengths, we begin to have a more positive experience, regardless of what stage they're in.
That makes so much sense. And
We have
also, I know
another-
you're going to let me know if there's
We-
questions or
Yep,
thoughts.
Luba has a question. My mother plays.
Same Luba?
Don't know. My mother plays piano on her electronic keyboard, and her musical skills and sight reading are still quite good. How long can I expect this to continue? What skill will be with her till the end?
Laura, why don't you start on that one?
Okay, the first thing that comes to mind is that her love of music will always be with her. And so to that end, we have what's called a music project at the Alzheimer's Society. And I'm not trying to push it, I'm just trying to explain how beneficial it is. We know that music is universal and taps into long-term memories as well as emotions. And so we provide people who are living with dementia with a free music player downloaded with their absolute favorite music from the past. And they can enjoy music throughout the coming years. So regardless of whether she still has the ability to read, which is in fact one of the longest lasting abilities, or to play music, she will always be able to enjoy it on some level.
Wonderful. And
Anonymous has a question.
Sorry, Alta, just before we do that one, Dr.
Oh,
Andrusia,
sorry.
I presume, no, not at all. But it occurred to me that music must be a big part of the folks at Ivan Franco.
It is. It's like Laura said, music is universal, and it lasts, and it provides joy. So yeah, Ivan Franco, of course, there's constantly music on, whether it's you know, you can hear the mass playing in the distance, or songs, all the activities. You know, a lot of these songs were learned during their childhood, and those childhood memories often stay longest, sharpest. So yeah, and it gets people moving, right? I mean, their emotions, they get positive, they participate in games and stuff. So it's yeah, music is has great power.
And all to thank you, Doctor. And all the just something occurred to me. Uh, I invite everybody in the audience who wants to put their favorite song in the chat. Just put the name of your favorite song or music in the chat, and we'll come back to that perhaps later if we can. Alta, what else have you got online for us?
How effective are medications in alleviating dementia symptoms?
I think the doctor gets first go at that one.
Yeah, that's a great question, and it doesn't have a terribly long answer. They are effective, but they don't cause a big effect. I don't know what percentage to use. Let's say 20% to 25%, where you can slow the progression, where you can kind of reduce some of the symptoms. Some people feel less anxious. You know, when you get, especially the early stages of dementia, that word, that technical word that Laura used that I'm not going to try to repeat, but it's a real issue where they don't know they have a problem, but then at times they do. And so the medications kind of help them kind of take the edge off of that. And that's an important edge to look at. So yeah, they're not big effects. The overall course of the disease still tends in the same direction. But they're useful, and some people they're more useful than others. It's like I say, 20%, let's say.
Did you want to add to that, Laura?
It also, from my research, depends on what form of dementia they have. So alleviation of symptoms is quite a bit more successful with frontal temporal dementia or Lewy body dementia. And I just think that's something that needs to be noted as well.
Thank you.
It is anonymous. It is clear that dementia leads to mental decline, but does it also lead to physical decline? If so, please explain how.
First come, first serve. Doctor or Laura?
Yeah, okay. So it does. It's slower, but eventually it does. I think how it does it is, I mean, again, I'm just going on personal observation. I think it's mainly because people become less active. You know, when you're not moving, your muscles, you know, thin out. So yeah, over time, people become less mobile. And that really kind of points to how it's important to interact with the people so they maintain their physical strength.
Right. I guess that goes for all of us,
Yeah.
doesn't it?
Yeah.
Renata.
I turned 50 just last week.
Yeah, we heard that. Renata is asking, what is one thing I can do to make my grandmother happy when I visit? How do I recognize what upsets her?
That's a very loaded question. I can give you a quick answer, but I also would encourage you to be involved with the Alzheimer's Society, either through our educational programs or our support programs, because they can give you so much insight into those types of questions. So what can you do for your grandmother to make her happy? What did she used to like to do? What is her favorite thing? Did she bake? Maybe just take some personal time with her, give her a beauty hour, do her hair for her, put some laundry away, make her feel involved. There's so many different things that you can do with her to make her happy. And I'd love to have you speak with one of our counselors at the Alzheimer's Society just to get some more reflection on that and some more ideas.
Actually, I wanted to sort of go back on the earlier question, but to incorporate what Laura just said. As we've been saying, it's important to kind of let the person lead and to give them what makes them happy. We were talking in the earlier question about physical strength declining. And I said it's important to interact, and it's true. I'm not taking that back, but at the same time, you always have to adapt it to the person's abilities and drive and inclination. That drive over time does decline. So, forcing them to, get with the exercise program is not going to work. It just isn't, and it won't go with what makes them happy. And over time, a slower pace is going to be what makes them happy, and they're going to just want to relax and spend time together. So they're going to have a physical decline. There's no way around it. You just got to go with the flow.
Mhm. And I think to that also, when we think about what am I going to do with my grandmother to make her happy, it doesn't have to be a structured activity. It doesn't have to be, we're going to do this craft and it's going to start here and it's going to end here and we're going to have a final product. It can be simply spending enjoyable time together, sharing food, or doing her hair or her nails, simple things like that.
Thank
So
you. Thank you very much that's a lot of ideas, and it's amazing the creativity that families seem to be able to put into when they feel that they have permission, which they give it by the doctor. They give it, oh, I can be creative with my mom, and it's amazing what happens. Thank you for that discussion, Laura. Alta.
Salamia says, thank you for an informative seminar. What are the activities, in addition to music, you might suggest for dementia patients in long-term care settings?
Okay.
Again, a loaded question. My background is in recreation therapy, so I could go on all day with the answer to that question. But I really would encourage you to look at who the person is from the past, now, and even in the early stages, who they want to become, and incorporate programs and activities that are meaningful to them. And like I said, it doesn't have to be a craft that you start from beginning to end. It can incorporate activities of daily living. If she was the person who was involved in raising her children and cleaning the house, perhaps those are the types of activities that are more meaningful to her. So I'd like to encourage you to look at who she is and what would be important to her, including things like music and perhaps reading the Bible, etc.
I hope I know that's going to be helpful to the questioner. Alta?
Larissa, how does one get tested for dementia?
Well, you're
That's
both
a question.
probably doing that. Doctor, do you want to start, or?
Yeah, what's the question from you? There's no specific blood test. It's you take the constellation of symptoms, and you tend to do a questionnaire. There's a couple different kinds of questionnaires you do. It sounds like a very imprecise approach, but it is thorough. So to make the answer short and concise, I'd say you take a history, you follow an overall pattern, you talk to the family members, you find out what are the difficulties, and there's a certain constellation and image that crystallizes. Then you do the questionnaire, and you get a sense from that how much cognitive effect it has been.
Okay. Are the standards pretty well the same across the province, across the country, as to how to measure dementia, Laura?
I'm not sure I have the answer to that. I believe they are, but I also would like to point out that we also look at ruling out other things that can mimic dementia through blood work, things like depression and thyroid issues, to make sure that it's not something that's reversible, and also mental health issues.
Wow.
I can't answer to the other question though, but I believe they're universal.
Doctor, that must be a very, very strong moment in the lives of the family and the lives of the person who's just been diagnosed and told, and you are one of the people who have to tell them that.
It is, but I agree that with Laura that, you know, you check the other type of medical things that you can test for, like thyroid and other medical problems to rule out that. Depression, of course, is also very important. But in terms of describing it as a moment, I probably would, let's say it's more of a process, because let's say you're doing the test and you're waiting for the results, and over that time, the person who's affected and the family has time to sort of go home and think about what it might be. You know, and then when you explain that you think that it is actually, let's say, Alzheimer's, which is the commonest version, I wouldn't say people necessarily believe it right away anyway. It's not like where if you have a specific test and you have an x-ray, you have a, you know, here's the diagnosis, here's the treatment we propose. I think it takes more time. Sometimes that's hard. It's painful. It's painful for everybody because, you know, for me, for example, when I worry that the person might insist on driving or you know, living alone and not accepting help, and then they're going to set the house on fire. I want there to be an immediate sort of moment where things, you know, kick in and people are able to provide help. Then I find that takes longer than for other things because it's of that long word that Laura used, where people don't quite realize what's happening, and even the family. I mean, I can say even from my own personal experience, not just professionally, but my mom had dementia, and I think it was years before I clicked in that that's what was going on, right? I remember I pulled out one of the questionnaires that I had from work, and when I gave it to her, I was completely stunned at how much cognitive loss she had because it just happens, it creeps up, right? So it's a process.
Yeah, it is a process. Alta?
If visiting seems to irritate, agitate a resident in long-term care, is it beneficial to space out visits, or is it better to keep showing up often?
Well, Laura.
I would like to think of that as whoever asked that question, I would hope that they would look at getting some more supportive education. And the reason that I say that is not to be insulting, but there's so much information out there about how to work or relate to people who are living with dementia, who are having difficulties or struggling, that you feel so much more empowered and better able to cope if you have that form of education. So I'm going to be tooting our horn about the Alzheimer's Society again today for that reason. And then if you're looking at a person having sort of a bad day when you're visiting, you want to look at what's behind that behavior or that bad day and try to figure out what's causing it, and then go from there, I think.
I would just add one little small point. Whether to visit often or not to visit often, I would say, again, most important is what Laura said, is the education, because you end up with more tools and more abilities. But a very simple way of looking at it is like, ask yourself what you are able to sustain over the long term. Like I find when people are living in the nursing home, it's a big adaptation for them. You know, they have a whole bunch of new people, a new environment, and a new schedule. And even the timing of your visits is kind of like a new schedule. And if you can sort of create a consistency early on, based on what you're going to be able to do long term. Now, it's a big question, like, well, how can you organize your life? But you need to answer that question, because if you're able to come every day, well, then that's great, right? But if you're only able to come every 2 weeks, well, it's possible you might be living out of town or whatever. Kids are in school, all kinds of limitations. But if you can figure that out, the sooner you do that, I think I find at least that the better it is for the person affected, because then they're able to, even though they're not as able as we might be, but at some point they have some ability to adapt. And as long as there's a consistency, their emotions sort of develop resilience to that, and it's easier for them.
Can I also add that there's always a meaning behind the behavior that we're seeing. And so let's say you go through the process and you can't really discover what the meaning is, there's a point in time where you need to decide, what is the meaning behind the visit? What do you hope to accomplish? Is it for your own personal sort of relief to be visiting, or is it that you want to enhance the person's life? So look at the goal of each visit and the reason behind the visit as well.
You know, Laura, there must be a mixture in many cases.
Yep.
You want to help, but you want to know, you want to be there, you want to help. It's all of the above. Yeah. Alta.
When on an off-site visit, returning to the long-term care home almost always evokes a negative response. She says, you're taking me back to jail. Is it better only to visit her in the home?
Who wants to start on that one?
I wish I could. I mean, the answer is probably at some point the answer is yes, but it's not right away. That's, again, I said go with the flow. It's there comes a point where, yeah, I'm sorry to sort of be stuttering through this question, but if, you know, don't stop yourself from doing it, because the positive experiences still outweigh the negative last moment. The thing that a lot of people worry about is that, you know, that parting, that painful parting is sort of eternal, but luckily it isn't. Like, thankfully, dementia does shorten people's memories, right? In some ways, there's positive to that, so they don't stay a wreck for that long. So overall, I think it's still good to make those off-site visits. I think that people get a lot of positive energy from that. They get over their upset more quickly than even we might, because the heartbreak doesn't stay because they forget. And then eventually, of course, when their abilities get more limited, then those visits have to be reduced. But yeah, I hope that answers your question.
It must be helpful to there would be two reasons from the family. The family would love to often have them with the family, and the family might need a break, and it's better to visit at the home. Is there some rationale to that, Laura?
Yeah, you want to gauge who's benefiting and at what level they're benefiting, right? So oftentimes one of the same question comes up at Christmas. I really want to have mom home for Christmas, but I'm worried that she's going to get upset, as she often does. And it's the same sort of situation. Who's going to benefit from the visit at home at Christmas, right? It's meaningful and purposeful for you, but is it really to mom? Or could you change Christmas up this year? Does she have to come to the cottage this summer? Is it too much for her? Is it too overwhelming? And maybe we need to visit more in the summer outside on the patio at the home. So it's thinking about it in a different light.
Sure. Yeah. Wow. That's a big job for the family.
It is.
Alta?
If one is concerned a family member might have dementia, is it proper to call their physician and express a concern? Or does this violate medical protocol?
Laura, would you like to start with that one?
No, I think the doctor should.
Okay.
I was so happy that I wouldn't have to answer that question. You know, common sense, of course, tells us, just as the person posing the question, you know, you want to get the advice of someone who knows, you know, how to recognize it. But yeah, is it violating? You know, there are gray areas. The short answer, I would say, is it's not bad to call and ask, right? You can't force a person to go see a doctor if, you know, they're, until now, have always been mentally competent. So it becomes tricky. Like, how do you declare someone mentally incompetent when they already are, but they haven't been before? And yet you have to go by the rules that you followed before. So it becomes tricky, and I wish, you know, I had a straighter answer. But what you can always do, you can call that person's doctor and say, look, I have certain concerns. And then that doctor will, as I would, try to find an excuse to see the patient and try to bring up these matters now that he's informed, or he or she's informed, to try to get at it with the patient, and you have a relationship with the patient, and you can open up the discussion that way. So without being direct about it, that's kind of how people usually do it.
Well, that's so helpful to so many people, just that comment, Doctor. Alta?
I've just got a comment. Thank you. Yes, you have all been very helpful. And we're 10 minutes away from the end. So if anybody wants to ask any more questions, we have time for a couple more.
In your experience, you've both been in this field for many, many years. Well, I should be careful when I say that, shouldn't I? But you have a lot of experience. When you become active in giving so much guidance, you must have gone through many steps of recognizing I'm trying to think of the physical as well as the mental effects on the body, the social aspects. Where do you get your training in both of your cases? Laura, where did you start out in this?
So I told you, Don, I started out as a volunteer when I was 16 in working with seniors. And that was when I initially connected. And a lot of people in the field have had a grandparent or a parent who have experienced dementia, and that's why they continue in the field. And that was also my experience. I was the primary caregiver for my grandmother, who passed when she was 93. And my training and experience comes in adult day programs, long-term care, working for the Alzheimer's Society, teaching at George Brown. It's just an accumulation of experiences that led me to where I am now, and being able to do presentations is really just a culmination of everything coming together. And of course, my background is in recreation therapy, as I said, as well as social work.
Yeah, what a combination, Laura. And thank goodness you've been doing it and continue to. Doctor, you would have maybe had a different route, although you mentioned that you had dementia to experience it with at home as well.
Yes, I would say I could use the same word as a cumulative experience. I'm strictly speaking a family doctor, so my training was not in geriatrics, but over time, as it is in general in family practice, you're going to see more older people because older people get sicker. And so with experience and in years, and then what happened was I was in Montreal for a bunch of years, and I worked in actually first in the Ukrainian residence they have there. It's not the same. They don't have one like we have here in Toronto. But yeah, so I had a little bit of a Ukrainian background there. Then I worked in other nursing homes and the Veterans Hospital in Montreal. There's a hospital for the veterans, in Saint Anne de Bellevue. So there was World War II veterans and stuff, and so there was, I think it really helped also for me to see that not everybody had dementia. Of course, there's other people with other disabilities, and at the same time, when they were veterans, it sort of underlines the point that these are major contributors to our lives. These are not just shells, as the video was talking about, but truly sometimes heroic people that made huge contributions to what we have and what we enjoy. And yeah, it was kind of made it more of an honor to participate in their care.
Wow.
And then I worked also in palliative care as well. So that wasn't so much dementia, although in some cases there was dementia. And so it helped also to sort of see those approaches, how you can ease people's suffering.
And you know what, shout out as well to the people on the staff at Yvonne Franco. They're fantastic.
Thank you.
Alta, do you have any more for us? I do appreciate that
We do not as of the moment, so.
Well, then I'd like to thank you all.
I'd like to thank Don Baker and all the participants for an excellent session. Thank you.
You know, Alta, Laura, you've been so helpful to this session. Thank you as well, Dr. Andrusia. Thank you, Laura. It means a lot when you give your time and your focus. We thank you for that.
You're welcome,
behalf-
John. My privilege and my pleasure. Absolutely.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank
On
you,
behalf of all
Doctor.
of
It's
us.
nice to meet you.
Same here.
On behalf of all of us at Act Two Studio Works, thank you, audience, for your participation, your questions. They're revealing, and thank you for sharing them. If you feel this presentation has been impactful for you, or if you feel there are other organizations you belong to which might benefit from seeing it on video as you did, or indeed we have a 45-minute stage presentation which goes into more aspects. Here's how to contact me, and you'll see it on the screen. Moving Scenes, our email is movingscenes@act2studioworks.ca. And I see my phone numbers there. Call me, I'd love it. And our website is movingscenes.act2studio.ca. Dr. Andrusiak, Raya, Kavika, Olya, Olena, and all of you at Yvonne Franco, thank you for inviting us and for your warm hospitality. And Doctor, back to you.
Thank you. Again, I'd like just to thank Dawn for bringing this presentation to us, all the actors and all the participants, Laura for answering your questions so insightfully and informatively, and all the people who joined to participate.
Yes, and on behalf of Yvonne Franco Homes, both at Royal York and Winston Churchill, thank all the participants and certainly all the speakers on this particular topic. I just wanted to remind everyone that we will be sending you a survey. We want your feedback, and we actually looked at the feedback from the last session, which indicated Alzheimer's as their #1 choice. So we do listen, and we tried to put together information that'll benefit you. Thank you very much, everyone, and enjoy the rest of the weekend.
Thank you, Raya.
Right.